Mom, I saw Dylan's dad make dinner. Like, actually cook, and it was straight fire. He said it was Blue Apron Assemble and Bake. All the ingredients showed up pre-chopped, and he just laid it out on a baking sheet, and no cap. Dinner was on the table in like 25 minutes. Apparently, it's chef designed, and it has like over 40 grams of protein. That's a lot, right? So maybe we try it. Just saying. You can be the next Dylan's dad. Blue Apron. Get 50% off your first 2 orders plus free shipping with code LISTEN50. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Hello everyone and welcome to How Are the Podcast. It's Gav and you join us for our post-match reaction pod as we sit here to chat all about Sunderland 1, West Ham 3. It was a poor performance from the lads at the London Stadium, and unfortunately we're here to chat about it. So if you've tuned in to listen to us chat about it, then you are sadistic. That's all I can say. The two other sadists in the room with me today. First up, we've got Andrew Smithson. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. Yeah, I think we're all in a little bit of shell shock, aren't we?
Yeah, you're wearing that black top as well, which I'm convinced is the reason why we keep getting beat away from home. So I'm going to blame you for wearing it as well, just because I want to blame people today. Also with us is Jonny Hawley. Hello, mate.
Aye, all right, lads. It's slightly less happy circumstances than usual that we're meeting, but, you know, at least we get a bit of free therapy out of it.
Yeah, well, at least I'm not on a train back from London or a bus back from London, because I feel sorry for the fans who went all that way for an early kick-off to see that. It was poor. Yeah, I mean, where do we start? Like, it was just, that first half was it the worst we've had this season? I would probably say yes, given the opponent and kind of just the way we de-escalated really quickly. It wasn't great, was it, Jonny?
No, it was really poor. I think, to be honest, it might be the worst half of football we've played in like at least 2 seasons, I think. You know, I know we were bad at Coventry away last season or whatever, and, you know, we were poor for the first 20 against Man United and stuff like that, but there wasn't even like any positive to take out the first half, was there? Other than if you're grasping at straws a bit, we started a little bit lively. You know, we had the ball in their third for a little bit, the first 5 minutes or so, but even then we didn't look threatening, and it was one of those where I think sort of 10, 15 minutes in, you were already thinking like, whoa, we need half time, which is never a good sign, is it?
No, that's right, Andrew, isn't it? We were pretty good for about 5 minutes at the start. We did get forward and create a couple of little chances, didn't we, where we looked sort of threatening, but we just seemed a bit too wide open, and West Ham were up for it. Like, fair play to them. Like, as much as I said before the game, we're a better team than them, which I still believe is the case. I just think that they had their tails up, having picked up a couple of wins, maybe moved a player or two out the door. They've moved a few in. The likes of Somerville back in form, and you just got the feeling from probably 5 or 6 minutes in that West Ham were up for it, and unfortunately I don't feel like we were particularly prepared for it.
No, we seemed flat. I don't know if West Ham necessarily started with their tails up, because you're right, the first few minutes we looked on it and I was thinking, there's something here for us today. And then, we just lost all control. And I think we gave West Ham a bit of confidence. You know, they were probably expecting a much tougher game against us. I think their home record is absolutely appalling. But that's what happens when you let a team like that get 1 goal ahead. They then suddenly get like an injection of confidence. And then by the end of the half, they're flipping, pinging in shots from 30-odd yards. And you just think, man. So, West Ham, fair dues. West Ham did all right, but I can't shake this feeling that it was us to blame, and we've shot ourselves in the foot rather than West Ham were particularly great. I think we need to look at ourselves quite deeply after that one. I didn't see it coming, but it's a bit of a kick in the teeth, must admit.
Yeah, I think there was a massive granite shaker-shaped hole in the midfield, Jonny, wasn't there? It was clear that the most influential player at the football club just wasn't on the pitch, and the leadership, the direction he gives, the protection he gives the back four, none of that was there. And you can kind of to a degree, understand the thinking from the manager, what he's decided to do, because Enzo Lafay has really stepped up since that Brentford game in terms of his leadership. I think he's really impressed all of us with his work rate. He dropped him in there. Hume, I'm not so sure about, because we had midfield players on the bench. I like Trey Hume. I thought when he played on the right side of midfield last week, he did okay, actually. But it just didn't work, did it? That makeshift midfield just didn't work. And it was pretty clear early on it wasn't working. And part of us thinks, yeah, the manager got it wrong. But also, you can't ignore the fact Granit Xhaka was basically sat on the bench and not on the pitch.
Yeah, it reminds us a little bit of, the way that Ange Postecoglou at Spurs, they were getting beat every week, and every week the Spurs fans were going, yeah, but we've got no defenders, lads. Like, what are we meant to do when everyone's injured? It felt a bit like that today, where it's a bit like, well, there's holes you can pick in the team selection. There's plenty of criticisms we can make about the performance, and I'm sure we will over the course of the next however long. But you're right, like, at the end of the day, you just can't escape the fact that Xhaka was injured, and, how are you supposed to replace a player like that? I think there's no team in world football really, other than Arsenal, Man City, maybe those kind of teams, and even then, who've got options as good as players like Xhaka, who can just come in a pinch. Like, those players don't really exist. So yeah, it's in some ways it's almost unavoidable. But having said that, I do think, because I think you spot on, like, it affected the organisation and the defence massively, but a lot of balls were being let to bounce in areas they shouldn't have been. There was slack closing down. There was inability to fight for second balls. And there was a lot of very, very wayward passing in that first half. And you mentioned Hume, and I don't want to go in too hard on him because he's been brilliant this season. And he grafts even when he doesn't play very well. But he was woeful on the ball today. And if you're going to stick somebody in the middle of midfield over a Getrauda or whoever, like you say, we had options on the bench, they've got to be able to make the simple passes. And unfortunately, Hume was one of many, but he was the one who I think took the spotlight in the first half. Nobody was at it. So, yeah, totally agree. Xhaka's absence was gigantic. It can't not be. But I still think we also could have given a lot better of a showing of ourselves than we did. And unfortunately, that's where the disappointment is for me, because you can get beaten a game like that, but to capitulate in the first half the way we did wasn't really acceptable.
Yeah, I'm one of these, Andrew, who, when I sit back after the match and we've had the chance to actually watch how it played out and analyse the performance, I don't like to kind of change my pre-match stance on team selections, because it's very easy to do that. Like, I saw people losing their heads over Hume starting in midfield, but I didn't see any real furore about the decision when the team was announced. Do you know what I mean? So I wasn't angry about it pre-match. It would be hypocritical of us to be angry afterwards. I can sit and say we got it wrong. I think we definitely got it wrong. But I'm not sitting there pointing the finger at the manager saying, you did this, you should have done this, you should have done that. I think it's very easy to do that after the fact. But we saw when Diarra came on, when Talby came on, that, we probably did have a little bit more quality on the pitch. But that's just a lesson learned for me. I think, going forward into next week, he's probably now got a better idea of his squad after this than he probably would have after a draw, maybe. So I don't know what you think about the team selection and stuff, but what was your feelings pre-match? Were you in the same lines as me, just kind of thinking, well, that's all right, or were you shocked?
No, I was happy enough with the selection, and yeah, it's very easy to be wise after the event. But at the time, I didn't see any problems with that selection. I wouldn't mind us trying to get Gertrude into the team, and that might have been the only thing I would have done differently. But certainly, the starting 11 looked fair enough to me. I don't even think it was the formation or the individual picks. I just think we started a little bit well. After the first few minutes, we got a little bit sloppy. I think we would have been 2-0 down regardless of whether Xhaka was on the pitch or not. I think we were just so far off the pace. Where we really missed Xhaka for me was between 2-0 and 3-0, because panic did seem to set in throughout the team. We started giving away daft free kicks. We got a couple of stupid yellows. Things then did look really disjointed. But prior to that, I just think the players were just not at it. And that overrules any pre-game selections. So yeah, disappointing.
Yes, indeed it was. The goals, let's quickly run through them because we have to. Somerville scored on 14 minutes, Jonny. I actually thought this was a good goal. I can't remember who said it this week on one of the pods this week, but every time you concede a goal, you can pick faults with your defending because, generally speaking, you've done something wrong to allow a goal. I actually think it was I thought the ball from Bowen was fantastic. Peter Crouch was licking his lips over that on the post-match analysis on TNT. He was saying he had, absolutely unbelievable cross. You're licking your lips when you're watching that because he used to love them, hanging them up at the back post. And Nordy Mukiele is the closest man to Somerville, but Somerville's running onto it. And it's very, very difficult to stop somebody when they're running onto a ball. And I just think this was a good goal. It was, agonisingly close to Robin Ruffs. I think there was a lot of power in the header, which is what took it past him. But if I'm being honest, if I was a West Ham fan, I'd be buzzing with that. I think it was a really good goal.
Well, the thing is, you're right. Like, you can sort of point fingers and nitpick mistakes in any goal because for a goal to have been scored, a defence hasn't done its job. So, that kind of goes without saying. And Mukiele is the one who I think if you are doing your sort of Sky Sports style analysis, you're in front of the big screen and you're zooming in and drawing highlights, I think you'd be looking at, there's a moment just before the ball comes in where basically Hume and Mukiele effectively swap the player that they're marking, and Hume's goes straight to him, but Nordy's is Somerville, who hangs a couple of yards back, and Nordy doesn't step up and go with him. So if you're being hypercritical, you could say maybe if Mukiele's a bit more proactive, he gets closer and whatever. But I agree, there's the very fine margins that are going to happen. My bigger complaint is just before the ball gets worked out to the right-hand side to Bowen to beat Ronaldo and put the cross in, we let the ball bounce outside our own box, and there's two Sunderland players looking at it. I think one's Lafay, and I can't remember who the other one is. They stood a couple of yards off, just watching the ball drop. Of course, you're going to get punished if you're letting the opposition have the ball within 25 yards of your goal. We're in the Premier League. It's not League One where you could give some of them strikers the ball 6 yards out and you'd still be guaranteed to keep a clean sheet. You're going to get punished, and, so I think it was deservedly West Ham punished us and we deserved it because you can't be, like I said earlier, second balls and stuff, bouncing balls in dangerous positions. They're the basics. You can't excuse those. The fine art of defending, things can go wrong. But those, just committing to the second balls and putting yourself in the 50-50s, they have to be non-negotiables, and they weren't, and that's why we got punished.
Yeah, and then to be honest, Andrew, after that, I felt we looked a little bit shell-shocked and just didn't really cope with going 1-0 down very well. And I remember before the game, I think it was the guy that Chris spoke to on the opposition preview had said about the first 15 minutes are very important at the London Stadium because if you can if you can get at them, the crowd starts to lose their heads a bit. But this was the polar opposite because they scored very early. And the crowd started to get behind them a little bit, and the players were feeling it. You could tell they've got momentum from winning a couple of games, and it kind of it was them carrying on from the last couple of games. And whereas Sunderland just weren't at it whatsoever, and we kept making mistakes, giving silly fouls away, not really putting the passes together in the way which we normally do when Shaka's on the pitch. And then the second goal came, which was from the penalty spot, but it was a silly decision from Trey Hume to dangle a leg. I thought, he hadn't played well up to that point either. He'd been getting tortured down that side, and he's made the decision for the referee by hanging his leg, I think. And then the penalty, Jared Bowen steps up to take it, a very dependable player. You've got to feel for Robin Ruffs because honestly, for all three goals, I thought he was inches from saving all of them, and he was with this one. He goes the right way, but it's just such a good penalty from Bowen. It's perfectly into the corner, beats him 2-0, and honestly, at that point, just felt like game over.
Yeah, I agree, by the way, about Roofs. Really unfortunate, particularly with the penalty, because he's guessed the right way. He's a fraction away from it, and it's because he's managed to hit it into the side net. And I think if it was any further along, Roofs makes that save. Yeah, no complaints whatsoever with the decision to give a penalty. It was a nailed-on penalty was how I saw it. But yeah, this is what really frustrates me. At the start of the game, there was going to be this fan protest by West Ham, and the mood is all low. And
Did that even happen, by the way?
It didn't look to be particularly well supported. I think they just had
No.
empty seats in the ground anyway. But certainly the fans were not coming to the game on the crest of a wave. So yeah, had we got to 30 minutes and made the players panic, made the fans get on their backs, that's a very different situation. Whereas what's happened is we've almost made it easy for them. By half an hour in, they're almost in cruise control, and then they suddenly start looking like a decent team. So I felt really, really disappointed by that. And yeah, the penalty wasn't good defended by Hume, but pretty much most of the first half, there was players doing things that you wouldn't expect from them. Just a real off day.
Yeah, and I was praying for half-time at that point, Jonny, and just hoping we'd get into the break, make a couple of changes. I don't want to really dig players out, but there were probably 4 or 5, maybe more actually, who just weren't at it. They just weren't at it. Ronaldo has been brilliant all season, but he just kept giving away silly fouls, and actually, we'll get onto it, but get on with it now if you want. He should have probably been sent off. The ref's done him a massive favour keeping him on the pitch, and then he gets subbed off at half time. Mundell was just completely figured out by Wan-Bissaka, showing him down the line, saying, "How then?" Because he knew he'd beat him in the foot race. Mundell just needs to. I thought he was pretty good last week, but if you're going to play in the Premier League, you've got to have more than just one trick. You've got to stop trying to do the same thing over and over. When Wan-Bissaka's done his analysis of Sunderland during the week, he'll have seen that all Mundell wants to do is go inside on his right foot, try and surprise him occasionally, go down the outside, play a 1-2, run beyond him, get into a foot race. I know Wan-Bissaka's really good in those situations, but you've just got to vary it up. And he didn't, and he kept getting snuffed out. There was this giant gap between midfield and defence constantly. Like it was as though we didn't have a 6 on the pitch. As we've already mentioned, Hume just was absolutely miles off it. Touch was horrendous. Gave a penalty away, just really off it. And my ender just wasn't in the game. And I could probably add to that. I'm not trying to dig anyone out, certainly, but the story I'm building up here is it was poor. We were 2-0 down. I was just wanting to get into the break, thinking, right, if we get into the break, the manager will make changes, and then comes the third goal, and Fernandez just absolutely spanks it in the top corner. And again, I think Roofs actually gets his hand to it slightly, but it's too powerful. It goes beyond him. If we're being honest, what's the fair doing, really, in there? Just dangles a leg, doesn't try and close the ball down? Am I being harsh, or is that fair?
I completely agree. That was going to be my big complaint yet again about this goal. Similar to the first one, the first one, like I say, maybe you can point fingers at the defenders in the box. No, the problem's before the ball comes in. And with the third goal, I'm sure there's some people who are ridiculously harsh who will be going, well, if the keeper gets a hand to it, he probably should save it. No. That problem was caused by the lack of closing down yet again. As you say, Lafay, he just stands and he's watching and he dangles a leg. It's difficult because you don't want to just see 4 or 5 players all converge and sprint to the same point. You want there to be a bit of rhyme and reason, but Lafay stands and watches. Ballard doesn't really move. There's a couple of others again who are sort of in shot on the screen when you watch it happen on the replay, and there just doesn't seem to be anyone who's willing to take that first move and go and close down. So that's for me, that's really, really disappointing. You can't be letting good players have that much time and space on the edge of the box.
Yeah, and it reminded me a little bit of that Diaz goal for Man City at the Etihad, where
yes, exactly.
It was just. I don't know what the thinking was necessarily. Is it just the way we kind of deal with those sorts of things? We think, well, we would rather allow a long shot than a move break through us kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe it was that, but it did remind me of that goal.
And that's a fine and dandy strategy when it's 0-0 or whatever against them. But when it's already 2-0 and they've got the tails up and the players are full of confidence, the last thing you want to be doing is giving them the chance to take aim, because you guarantee, like, if you're 2-0 up at home, every single player on your team, if they get the ball within 30 yards, is probably thinking, like, oh, I could get my name on the score sheet here. I could get us chucked up the running order a match of the day tonight, like. and they're all Premier League footballers. They can pick a spot when they've got a bit of time. So yeah, it was really disappointing again. Like, as I say, Roos, for me, absolutely no blame. He does well to get near all of them. And I agreed with what you said before as well. He is quite unlucky on all three, really. And Bowen slips when he hits the penalty as well, which I think without the slip, it might have been closer to the keeper. But yeah, it was emblematic of the whole first half, I think, that third goal. We were too slow, we weren't committed enough, and West Ham just smelled blood and took a chance. And sometimes that's all it takes, you know. It's fine margins in the Premier League. We all say it all the time. And all three of those goals could very easily have just been slightly different and all been saved, or, you know, it could have been a massively different game. But if you keep giving them chances, eventually the margins are going to go their way. And you're going in 3-0 down at half time. And it really is game over at that point if it wasn't a 2-0.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Yeah, and then the second half, Andrew, we came out after the break, made a bunch of changes, which I don't think anyone could have argued with, really. I think I was certainly expecting us to come out after half-time with a different team. Talby on for Mundell, who I said before, I thought he was terrible. Ronaldo, who the referee has done him a big favour there, massive favour. I think if it hadn't have been 3-0, the referee's sending him off, because the tackle he makes just before half time is terrible. It's like it's a nailed on yellow card, and he was already on a yellow. Certain came on for him, and then Habib Diarra came on for Trey Human. There wasn't any real change of shape necessarily. I think we kind of kept it the same, more just changed the personnel. And we were a little bit brighter, but like the game was over, really. And there was a point at 3-1 where I felt if we get another one soon, this is game on. But I think coming out at half time, I think if we're being honest, it was a bit of a non-event, really. The rest of the game could have been a lot more if we'd been at it, but obviously we weren't. And yeah, we were a little bit better. West Ham basically just sat off us for the majority of that second half, let us have the ball, and we get that goal, and it's actually a really nice goal. I'm a bit annoyed that this one's probably going to get lost in our memories. Like in a year's time, if I try and remind you of this game, you're probably not going to remember this goal. But it was a good move, you know. Diarra probably doing what Mayenda should have been doing down that side, and plays a lovely little ball into McYearley, who's running onto it. And as he's done repeatedly recently, McYearley puts a great cross into the box. Brian Broby's in the right place. Lovely header, 3-1. 6 minutes gone. Were you a bit like me, thinking another goal in the next few minutes here, and we could probably get back into this?
Oh, I'm always kind of positive about Sunderland's prospects, and even in the last 10 minutes, I was thinking, all it takes is another goal, we might get back into it. But realistically speaking, I think the second half was as frustrating as the first half for me. I know what you've said in that we were slightly better, but I can't get rid of this feeling of West Ham will just be thinking, we can't believe our luck here, lads. You know, they've not had to work their socks off to beat us. In the second half, they were more than happy to just let it drift on. They've got a dreadful home record. They've conceded a load of goals from headers this season. I think one of the stats I heard was that they've surrendered 15 points from winning positions. Yeah, I don't think we ever really threw the kitchen sink at them. That goal was a brilliant goal, and it came with plenty of time still left on the clock. So after that, if we'd penned them in and were launching the ball into the box and throwing ourselves at things, you could think, oh well, we've tried to rock them a bit. but they just cruised through it. Really, I didn't really feel as if we learned anything from that second half, because it was pretty much West Ham happy to let things play out. And that Ronaldo incident that you mentioned at the start there, and could he have been sent off? That again just showed to me how towards the end of the first half we'd lost all sense of composure. We'd lost our heads. We could have easily gone 2-0 behind and thought, right, that's it, lads, knuckle down, shut up shop till half time, let's go again, let's regroup at the break. But there was just so much really poor thinking, and the players were rushing into things and making the wrong options. It's as if they didn't know what to do after being behind. They were perhaps as shocked as us at how bad they were, and couldn't really ever snap out of that.
Yeah, that was the big disappointment for me, Jonny. Was we get that goal 3-1? You're playing a team who were struggling. Admittedly, I thought West Ham were decent in the first half, but 66 minutes, that's with added time, a good half an hour of play left. And we didn't really turn the screw at all. I think West Ham sat off and they let us have the ball, but it didn't look like the players upped the tempo at all, really, to me. I just felt like we scored, but we didn't look capable of kicking on. And that was disappointing, because genuinely, I think if we had have wanted to get back into the game, we really could have, because they're not special, West Ham. You know what I mean? And really, like I said, it became a bit of a non-event the rest of the half. I mean, we had like a good 10 minutes or so after the goal where I think that was the prime time to get back into it. And to be fair to Nuno, I think he recognised that, and he brought off Scholes at left back, who had just been done 2 times too many. Really, he was done for the goal. They bring on Malik Diouf, who I thought actually played really well for 20 odd minutes. Came on and just was a real physical battle for Diarra in particular down that side. So there was a period there where if we really wanted to get back into the game, that was the time to do it, and we just didn't. And petered out from that point, didn't it? Like, Wilson Isidore came on for my end, I didn't really do anything, and it just felt like a formality the rest of the game. It was disappointing, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head. It was the tempo. Nobody seemed willing. Again, a little bit like the flip side of the closing down in the first half, where nobody wanted to be, it seemed like, that first man to go and step and press. And it felt similar once we'd had got that goal back. Nobody seemed to want to be the guy who would take the ball and carry it 25 yards and then play a tell-em pass. There was still a lot of the same patterns of play going on, which felt quite strange and counterintuitive, really, because, again, I think you're right, that sort of 10-minute spell after the goal, if we had gone for it, they were there for the taking. Like, I know these are like, quite big ifs, if you get another goal, as if getting a goal in the Premier League's that easy. But if we had got another goal, then the whole game changes. The complexion becomes massively different. It just seems strange that the only player who seemed capable or willing of trying to up the tempo was Alderete. Like, it shouldn't be down to your left-sided centre-half to be the one trying to, give a bit of impetus to the team when you're chasing goals. But, look, some of the passes weren't great, but he was trying, balls down the channel for Talby, who, like, a couple of them very nearly came off, just, the touch wasn't quite there, or it was all very ambitious, so you can forgive it. But yeah, he's playing balls down the channel. Alderete also, I thought the whole game was very aggressive in a good way. Maybe barring the weird at the very end with the nearly goal that wasn't a goal. But, he was as committed in every header, in every challenge as he has been all season. And I think that transmitted through to when he was on the ball, he was still brave. Whereas I do think that even though there was a big opportunity to be able to get a proper foothold in the game and really threaten a comeback, there just wasn't that urgency. Some of that may have been due to legginess. I'm not saying that the players didn't want to win, but, barring Diarra's run and pass for the first goal, some of Alderete's moves and the odd little bit of interplay between, Mukiele and whoever on the right, or Talby and Sirkin on the left, which never really amounted to much, but at least we were trying to get him behind. that aside, it was still very pedestrian, which is not something that I think has been a criticism you could level at us much of the season. So again, disappointing to see it creep in today.
Yeah, that's the weird thing about this, right? Because I think Alderete played pretty well. I think Ballard might have even been my best player. I think Mukiele was decent, like great assist for the goal. Yet we've conceded 3 goals. That's 3 of the defence. You know what I mean? So it's just a strange one. You kind of hinted at it there, Johnny, but the game descended into a bit of farce, really. There was shit going on in the crowd with Shaka and their fans, which I'm pretty sure all he was doing was sticking up for himself, because it's not as if he'll have just stood up and picked a fight with a fan behind him. It'll have been the West Ham fan, I'm pretty certain of that. But no doubt people will use that as a stick to beat him with. But there was all that stuff going on. That with Alderete, and was it? I'm not even going to attempt to say the name of the centre half who he was kicking off with. Mavropanos, is that right?
Mavropanos, yeah.
I had to get that up before I actually tried to say it. Yeah, but them two literally nose to nose on the line, squaring up as West Ham hit the bar, was just one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. There was a few moments down the line where like Diarra's kicking off with the linesman. Nordy gets subbed off and then he's like booting off because he's been taken off the pitch, which I think was just done because he'd been trod on and rolled around on the floor because it had obviously hurt him. And they must have just thought, right, well, let's get him off. But he wasn't happy with the decision to bring him off. And you had O'Nien hitting the bar with a cross. It was like, I mean, the keeper does brilliantly to keep it out. But if it had been, again, that had been the second goal, it was game on at that point. But it just all, at the end of the game, Andrew, was just a bit stupid. I think we actually lost our heads. Like, as funny as it actually probably was when Alderete is like squaring up to that guy, completely lost his head. Like, not watching what's going on in the game. And like I say, just some of the, we got a bit drawn into like getting carried away a bit too much, I think. Like, I would even include what you said before about Ronaldo at the end of the first half. Like, an experienced player minutes before half time should know better. And I just think there was too much of that. There was too much of the carrying on and the silliness, really. It was indicative of the performance. I think the lads were just fuming with themselves, to be honest.
Gav, I think that last line sums it up. The players themselves, man, they don't need us to tell them that wasn't good enough. They knew fine well, and that was coming out in all these signs of frustration. I've been quite critical of West Ham, and I've said, they've had it handed to them on a plate. They can't believe their luck and all of this. But fair play to them, because they did handle that second half brilliantly. If you're a team at the bottom scrapping for points, they saw it out really well. And they knew that our heads had gone, and they were happy to just keep winding us up. And yeah, we did. We were biting like anything. There was that carry on with Alderete, as you mentioned. Xhaka, he's gotten a bit of chew with a fan. I think that was just after Mukiele had gone off. So I don't know if Mukiele kind of like throwing his arms around and being unhappy is kind of got the...
I think, yeah. Did the commentator not say it had been going on for a good 5 minutes before the camera panned to it? I think so.
Fair enough. But even still, yeah, I think everybody that was part of the Sunderland group today knows that it was out of character for them to be so off colour and were annoyed with themselves. West Ham are bound to play on that. They're perfectly entitled to, and they did it well. If we want to look for positives, we beat ourselves rather than West Ham beat us, if you get what I mean. And we, as a team of players, were clearly not happy with it. So you've just got to hope we can put it to bed now, get a solid week in the training ground, work out why it went wrong. Because certainly I think the desire will be there to get themselves back in the good books, because it was the whole thing was out of character. And as you rightly said, Gab, the last few minutes just descended into an absolute joke, when really I would have rather seen us channel our energy in a more attacking sense rather than getting involved in all this tit for tat.
Yeah, that's it. And I suppose the other school of thought with like particularly Nordy's reaction is he cares. He really wants to try and do his best for the team, and he doesn't want to come off the pitch. There was a bit of that, I think, with maybe Brobbey last week. I can't remember now. But you see it occasionally with players, they don't want to come off the pitch because they just want to. They think that they can contribute, and I get it. I love Nordy. I'm not going to chastise him for acting the way he did, even if it was a bit silly. I just think again, Jonny, it was probably the biggest sign of the way the afternoon had gone. It was just we lost our heads, and yeah, you can imagine what the dressing room was like after the game when they all went back in. They'll have all been absolutely fuming with themselves because they know they're better than that. Like they've done it loads this season when they've had to turn up against anybody in this league. More often than not, we do it, and they probably realise the opportunity we've missed because West Ham they're down there and they look like they're going to put up a good fight of getting out the bottom three, but we still back ourselves to beat teams who are struggling. And yeah, I just think they'll be really pissed off that they've thrown the chance away.
Yeah, well, they will be and they should be because it is a big chance that they have thrown away. I think the sort of off the pitch stuff, the attitude side of things, kind of reflected the on pitch stuff in a lot of ways. Like there wasn't many sort of glaring instances of someone losing their head. Like nobody threw a punch, nobody got sent off. Aldereti's thing at the end, it didn't end up in a goal, so it's more it's like the death by 1,000 cuts sort of thing. Like,
I just sort of thinking there. Can you imagine that, man, if they'd actually scored? He's just like nose to nose on the line like that.
It would have been like if they still made them on those like DVD compilations of like football's most bizarre moments and stuff. It would have been that level. But none of them did end up being big calamities. Like even Xhaka mouthing off with fans on the bench, like whatever's caused it and whatever the story is there. You don't need that. It's a distraction. It's something that we shouldn't be getting drawn into, but we did. And Ronaldo the first half, even like when West Ham got the penalty, Ronaldo, as the ball's spotted and the referee's telling people to get away, Ronaldo still stood there talking the ref's ear off, and the ref's like getting visibly pissed off with him. And you're thinking, mate, he gave the penalty about 5 minutes ago. By this point, he's clearly not changing his mind. Get out the way. It's so needless and so just petty almost, as if the players, like you say, it's probably just the fact they were so pissed off with themselves for playing badly that it's then sort of seeped into all the other aspects of their day, basically. And I imagine there's been some pretty frank conversations had in the dressing room at full time, because it seemed like just that kind of an afternoon where the tempers fray a bit, people are fed up, they're pissed off with themselves, they're pissed off with the result. So hopefully it's one where we can just, put it behind us as quickly as possible and move on, because we don't need to let it fester. Like you said just before, Gav, most teams we come up against, this has never been a problem, and we have had the right attitude and we have put good performances in. So we don't need to let this define us. We just need to try and let it wash over us as soon as possible.
Yeah, well, I did tweet something along these lines from the account after the game, but, unfortunately, we're going to have days like this in the Premier League. Like teams, there are good teams in this league. Even the poor teams have good players, as proven today, as proven when Wolves beat these 3-0 the other week. Wolves battered West Ham the other week, and that was a real turning point in their season. But every team in the division has players capable of scoring good goals, of taking you apart if you have an off moment, and that's what happened today. And to be honest, I thought that if you'd asked me in the summer by February where we'd be, I know we go over this repeatedly, but I would have thought we'd probably had a lot more of these Tonkins by now. And it's just I can kind of let that wash over me, Andrew. And I know you're a bit like me. Like I'm not happy, absolutely not. I'm pissed off with the result, the performance, and everything. And I'm sure every other Sunderland fan walking the planet is. And the way that they choose to express that is obviously very different depending on who you are. But for me, I'm just going to take it on the chin, because I kind of expect this to happen occasionally in the Prem. What you don't want it to become is a habit. It hasn't been a habit. So yeah, it is what it is for me. I'm really gutted. I'm disappointed. This feels like an opportunity missed, but I back the lads to put it right next week. So I'm going to just crack on, I guess.
Oh, yeah, we've always responded to defeats really well this season, and I've got, no doubt that we'll do it again. you're a better man than me, though, because I will be narky for the rest of the day. You know, I've got to go into town.
I'm
in
not
a
watching
bit,
the match of the day,
and I'll
put it that
probably
way. I'll report
aye,
football for the
aye.
rest of the
But yeah, I've got to go into town. I'll probably not be as like chatty with the cashiers now, and I'll be, you know, grumbling if somebody nicks me parking space or whatever. Which I think that's kind of almost like how the team went. You know, Jonny was saying that they just all looked a bit frustrated, and everybody's kind of getting cross with themselves and cross with each other. So yeah, the players are going to be hurting. There's no reason why they can't knuckle down. We don't have many performances like this. The only thing that differs, I appreciate what you're saying in that we're expecting a few beatings. I thought when Sunderland were going to lose this season, it was because we were outclassed by a better team. I think the difference today was we weren't outclassed by a better team. We've caused our own problems. So that will rankle with the players, but yeah, it's a rarity. They'll recover soon enough. I think it really is one about just getting back down to things at the academy. I don't know what's happening with Xhaka. I don't know what's happening with Mukiele, and if that was just a precaution or if he does have something longer term. So those are two things that need to be sorted out. But yeah, the sooner we forget about this and move on, the better, I think.
Yeah, and after the game, Reggie Slibris did say that Xhaka's been given a fortnight of rest before they reassess his ankle problem, so it could be longer than that. It probably will be, you would have thought, but yeah, we're going to have to do without him for a few games at least, so let's see where we go from here. But anyways, this was supposed to be a quick podcast, and we're 40-odd minutes in. They're never quick when we say that. So thank you very much if you've made it this far. Listen to us for 40-odd minutes talk about a 3-1 defeat, but there was lots of drama, lots to talk about. If you can't get enough of it, tomorrow we've got a more in-depth assessment of things and probably where things lie at the minute with Chris Martin and top Northeast football writer Ian Murta in the morning. So that'll be out mid-morning, so you can catch that then. But thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much, Jonny and Andrew, for joining me and jumping on straight after the game. It is much appreciated, boys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers. And hey, listen, we can all still enjoy our weekend. You know, this is just a one-off. This time next week we'll be fine again.
Just need Villa to do us a favour.
Oh, you've said it now. I'm going firmly into ignore football for the rest of the weekend mode, so that'll be me. I don't want to watch another kick until next Saturday. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Oh, we don't even play on Saturday. We play on Monday. Oh, we've got even longer to wait. We've got a long wait till the next game. Oh, I've just ruined everyone else's weekend now. Anyone who was still on the edge has now had it even more ruined than it already was, because they're going to have to wait until next Monday before they see another Sunderland game. But there we go. It is what it is. We'll be back with the pod every single day leading up to that Burnley game, so make sure you check in with us. We'll see you later.